Hogsty.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hogsty. We have a jam-packed show for you today, which is surprising because this is usually the dead part of the year. But it's Washington, so there's always some stories, maybe off the field, that are going on. And today is one of those days because Steve and Jamal, we have a big story about Alex Smith that came out from GQ. We had updates on all the Dan Snyder Lawsuits stuff that's been going on. Just a lot of craziness off the field. And then we also want to talk about some of the free agent and possible draft moves the team could make at tackle today. So we need to kind of dive right in. No talking about the weather, no talking about nonsense. Hope you guys are doing good.
I want to talk about the weather. Stop.
Guys, let's start with the big story this week. The Alex Smith GQ article that came out kind of drew a lot of hot fire on Smith because some of the things he said did not seem very nice about the team. I think that's fair to say, and we'll start with that. I will read the two quotes that everyone's talking about, and then we can give our input onto what happened. I think there was a little quote that started where he said, "They never thought I was going to come back. No one there," being no one in the team. And then he said something more detailed. "I think the rest of the world either doubted me or they patronized me. Yeah, that's really nice that you're trying. When I decided to come back, I definitely threw a wrench into the team's plans. They didn't see it. They didn't want me there. They didn't want me to be a part of it. Didn't want me on the team, the roster. They didn't want to give me a chance." And I think when he said that in this article, everyone kind of interpreted that as he's unhappy, he wants out. Alex Smith is just trying to nuke Ron Rivera's rebuild or whatever it is. So let's start with what we all saw in the article and kind of go from there.
I'm on Team Smith.
Yeah.
First of all, yeah. I think it seems to be pretty fair to say that the team didn't really want him back. I mean, Ron did everything he could not to play him. He was the third stringer to start the year. He only bumped up once the Dwayne Haskins situation completely, annihilated itself. They benched him as soon as possible. He probably could have played, that playoff game. So it didn't really seem like Ron really particularly wanted it. I'm not even really faulting Ron. He's the coach. He can do what he wants. So I don't know if I don't think it's Ron being vindictive, but I do think that Alex is probably right in thinking that the team, I think they certainly didn't think he would come back. I don't think anybody thought Alex would come back, and it's a testament to the strength of his character that he was able to do it at all, and the medical professionals that helped him. But in terms of the money quote, which is "they didn't want me," it seems like he's probably right. I just don't think it's from a vindictive standpoint. I think just Ron, he's not Ron's guy. Ron had moved on, and he kind of threw a monkey wrench into things. So I kind of stand with Alex for what he said. I just don't think it's the team being mean-spirited about it.
I think this whole ordeal frustrated me, and it frustrated me not in the sense of me getting upset at Alex or me getting upset at the team. I think one of the main issue with this whole story is that people actually took sides. And I was like, you got to understand, Alex, in those main quotes that we're talking about, Alex broke down the perspective in which he understood where the team was coming from. He spoke on his perspective too. He broke down everything from the standpoint of his truth. And quite frankly, there is nobody to blame in this situation. The Washington had no intention on playing Alex Smith. They couldn't foresee what in total, not in order, but in total. I think 4 quarterbacks getting hurt. Two quarterbacks getting hurt. One being benched because of poor play, who was the projected starter, and things like that. All so and so, you know how the story, how the season went on, but they had no intention on starting Alex. They had no intention on playing him, and from a person in Alex's shoes who was there every day and who was in the situation and who was the underdog in the situation, and a competitor at that, he's pissed off, and he's going to tell you that he's pissed off if he's being honest and open about the situation.
Mm-hmm.
He's speaking his truth in this moment to GQ, telling them how pissed off he was that nobody believed in him. And the surprising part from his standpoint is nobody believed in him on the staff, and they took efforts to keep him from getting on the field, which was the mention where he said they tried to put him on the PUP list.
Right.
There's so much that went on. And I think what people are missing when they say, I'm not speaking to Steve in general, he just happened to be the first one that talked. But there's a lot of people on Twitter who are taking sides and saying Alex should be grateful, or like Michael Wilbon, who spoke recently. I didn't even bother hearing the whole thing. I just looked at the headline. I'm being honest with you, but he trashed Washington. There was people who was on both sides.
Hold on. Michael Wilbon trashed Washington for something?
Yeah. I mean, it's very surprising. Exactly. And it just proves how out of touch he is, because he chose a side too. And of course, he trashed Washington. And I'm like, you're completely out of touch and don't even know what's going on. Clearly. And you can tell by his response. And that's where I'm getting at, is that there is no sides be true. Like, you can't, it's no possible way you can choose a side, given that both sides went through an ordeal in a situation that was not common to any NFL player in recent memory. He took his truth and presented it to GQ. He was pissed off. He was upset, and he had a point to prove. And he was mad that nobody believed in him, and they took efforts to keep him off the field. Not like I guess maliciously. That's the word. Not maliciously, but they just didn't want to take that risk, given where he came from. So I think at the end of the day, even though he spoke his truth, we have to understand that it worked out for both sides. He's not trying to rip the team apart. He is a professional person with great character. He took his truth, and I think if we were to hear a video, because a lot of people thought he came off ungrateful. If we were to hear a video, he would probably simply be telling a story for a blind person who don't understand what the hell happened. Mm-hmm. They just know that he had his leg broke. Like, he's probably just telling the story and telling his perspective and telling them where the team came from. I don't think he's pissed off, like, in his tone, but more so rehashing what happened or what transpired since that new coaching staff came in to in 2020. That's where I think it came from. And I honestly don't have a side. I understand both perspectives and I respect both perspectives, because as a competitor, he has a right to be pissed off because he has something to prove. And that's how I feel it. And I think the team has a right to not trust what they see because of the situation he's been through.
I think you stated a lot of stuff there, Jamal, and, it's a lot to unpack, but I kind of, because I was busy all week at work, I read the article before I even saw much about it on Twitter, and I was kind of surprised by how people were reacting, because I'll tell you, the way I took it was, when you're overcoming any serious injury, any serious obstacle like this, you have to have a weird internal monologue, and all of ours are different, how we overcome an obstacle. And it struck me that a lot of this is what he's telling himself about how the world sees him so that he can come back and keep on playing. And I think there's a lot of that in there too, of you're in rehab and you're going to rehab with guys from, veterans who, have lost limbs and things like that. You need to tell yourself it's you against the world just so that you can keep on, walk again. At first he wasn't even sure if he'd be able to walk after all the surgeries and everything like that. So, I think there's a lot of that in there too, of this isn't so much directed at Ron and the team, it's directed at, just himself, and it's his own internalization of what happened.
Well, I don't think he's claiming that the team is being malicious towards him.
No, I don't think
Uh,
anyone thinks it's malice.
yeah, and if anybody out there is interpreting his comments like that, I think that's incorrect. There, number one, the team had to move on.
Yes.
They had to move on.
You
They lost him. It didn't appear he was going to ever play again.
you can't
Um,
go
well,
into a season without a quarterback.
well, yeah, and had to draft. They spent a first-round draft pick on a quarterback, and then they lost the coach, and they have a new, whole new staff here who has another guy. I mean, because I think Ron Rivera is Team Kyle Allen. I still think that. And so I don't think they ever, in anybody's wildest fantasies, ever thought that Alex Smith would ever come back. And I don't think that Ron's particularly wild about Alex's play style, at least the current version of Alex, the non-mobile version of Alex Smith. So I don't think he really sort of fits into the team's plans, and they really only played him when they absolutely had to, and everybody else was, the Dwayne Haskins situation happened. Kyle Allen's hurt, and they really had no choice. I just don't think he's Ron Rivera's guy. I don't think anybody's disrespecting Alex Smith as a person or anything like that. And I don't think Alex was saying that, but I think Alex is being his version of the truth, which is, listen, they didn't think I would come back, and they didn't really want me back. They'd moved on, and they had
that
to
is
take
true.
me back. Yeah.
Like, no one thought he was going to come back.
No, but also don't think, that he just wasn't in their plans,
No.
So I don't think it's Alex being malicious
No.
at all. I think this is just Alex speaking what he thinks is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's probably right. That's when I say I'm Team Alex. I said that from the perspective of I think he's just telling the truth.
Yeah, I don't think that there's
right.
I don't think there's like a bunch of cloak and dagger ulterior motive in this.
No, nobody's disrespecting him. I mean, Ron Rivera didn't exhibit any sign he disliked him or anything. It's just
No,
I
mean,
think he's Rivera's guy.
At least publicly, Rivera has always said how much he respects Smith
yeah.
for what he's done and as a person. And I think Alex Smith did come out later after he kind of saw what happened with this online and said this was not intended to be a dig at the team or at anybody in particular. Like it's just him telling his perspective on what happened.
Well, also that.
Wait, did he say that, or was that the one where his spokesperson said that?
It might have been his spokesperson. I just saw the radio.com article about it.
Also, I think we need to remember this is GQ he's talking to. This isn't a sports reporter
Right.
who knows the dynamics of what's going on in Washington. GQ is he's going to be I don't know if it was a he or a she, but the reporter is going to be, a culture and entertainment and style type of expert. And that's different. That person isn't going to know what to ask. I think if Alex had come to us, I mean, not that he would, but if we had talked to Alex, we would have known what to ask and been able to dive deeper a little bit into what he meant in terms of his relationship with the team. And I just don't think you're going to get that out of GQ. So it's not that he was misinterpreted, but I just think the interview is kind of aimed at other things.
Right. And the only other thing I think that is worth kind of discussing is at the end of the article, he does talk about whether he'll come back or not. And he said that, he's still a few weeks away from even really talking about it and figuring out it sounded to me, and I didn't write down the quotes from this, but it sounded to me from what I read, he kind of wants to come back, but then he puts in the classic cop-out, but I got to talk to the wife first. Which, every guy who's been married knows that's usually the easiest way to back out of plans is, well, let me talk to the wife.
Well, the other thing is there's a ton of money at stake here.
There is.
Now Alex doesn't strike me as the type of person who's spent all his money on booze and cars and women, and doesn't have anything.
I mean, he does have a very attractive wife. That can be expensive.
Yeah, I know, but he doesn't strike, maybe I'm totally wrong, but he doesn't strike me as the type of person who's going to waste all his money. My guess is he probably has, I just venture a guess that Adrian Peters is still playing because Adrian needs the money because, there was a bankruptcy file and all that stuff. That doesn't strike me as what Alex Smith is. But all the same, if he would retire, even if the Redskins or Washington didn't pursue him for a portion of the guarantee, he's still giving up a ton of money in salary.
Yeah, it's
it's not
$10 million this year he'd give up.
Yeah, it's more than just, I need to talk to the wife. There's a lot of finances at stake. So that's part of it.
Well, I'm trying to look up on Sport Track what his career earnings have been.
Why don't? Oh, his career earnings.
Yeah.
I mean, he's he's up in the nine figures.
Yeah.
He's made a lot
I
of money.
think he is.
He's
I mean,
over 100 million in career earnings.
well, just from Washington, he's gotten something like $70 million at this point.
Yeah, he's made a lot of money. So
Yeah.
he really, unless he's just wasted again, he's wasted on women and cars. He probably has a ton of generational level money. Like his base. Let's see, his base salary in 2021 is 18.75 million.
Right. And if he gets released or he retired, he still gets 10 million. But that
and let's see. Okay, I don't have his base for 22, but point is, there's a ton of money at risk, and so that's a part of it.
Oh, sure, but at the same time, like you said, he already has generational money in the bank account at this point. And
that's what the decision is.
Yeah,
that's
and
what the decision
I
is.
think it's fair to say, we've all seen how he is on TV, how he, we know his personality. That's a guy who, after he retires, will be able to do whatever he wants anyway. In terms of, he could be in television, he could probably be in coaching. He's still going to make plenty of money after he retires.
Look, y'all, get your scissors out and snip, man, because he's getting cut. He's moving on. I don't know what he's going to do further, but you guys are right. He has a future. But as far as, Alex Smith here in Washington, the good thing is he let it all out.
Mm-hmm.
And now I pray to God they don't restructure. I pray that they don't. But still, we know that after this year, if you're still in the market for a quarterback, which they clearly are, if you're still in the market for a quarterback, it ain't no point in rehashing anything you got going on with Alex Smith.
Probably do.
I continue to believe that I don't think it's quite so clear that the team's just going to cut him. Given everything that has happened and everything he's been through and the status of Washington's quarterback room, which is atrocious, I just don't think that the team – I don't think it's a sure thing that the team's just going to cut him. I really don't.
I don't think they'll. I don't know if they'll cut him outright. I think they'll come to some kind of agreement, but I do have a hard time seeing him here next year. Like, just if I'm reading the tea leaves.
Well, purely from a business standpoint, sure, but I don't think that's all there is.
Yeah.
In consideration here.
Are you thinking of?
What's that, Jamal?
Alex, I was saying, Alex, what type of agreement are you thinking of? Like, come to an agreement. What do you mean?
Even if he doesn't want to retire, you kind of come to a PR-wise saying, look, we're parting ways just because he wants to start and we're kind of looking to get younger. That kind of thing.
Of course. Yeah, that's fine too.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes, you know what that is? It's a snip. That's all it is. Still get your scissors out. It's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll call him oil.
I just don't know. I mean, we'll see who's right here. One thing I do think is that Alex is enough class that he's going to figure it out before free agency starts.
Yeah.
That I do think.
And my thing is, personally, I just don't know. I just don't know who is going to invest into Alex. It's going to be really hard.
I know exactly who will invest into him if he's released.
Technically, people say it makes sense, Jacksonville. For obvious reasons, but it's like, even still, it's Urban Meyer. I guess he's gonna be like a player's coach, because I don't think Urban Meyer is really that interested in Alex Smith at this point. Just because they had a prior connection 20 years ago. You know what I'm saying? I don't like. That's the same thing that we think now. I'm sorry. Actually, it was. I would say that's the same thing we thought with Cam Newton last year. Like, they didn't want Cam Newton last season, and I just don't know who is going to be out there that's going to be like, all right, we'll take.
Urban Meyer's a little different though. I mean, Urban recruited him to Utah.
Yeah,
20 years ago. 25 years ago at least, because he had to play college. So 25 years ago.
He might be a perfect mentor to what's his name?
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence.
I think that is kind of what a lot of people would envision with that, is you're bringing him in to be the number 2 to maybe start a few games while Lawrence gets ready. But, Yeah,
if they draft Trevor Lawrence is the future. No matter, even if it's not week 1, Trevor Lawrence is the future. But he would need a quality veteran behind him.
Right.
Yeah, Trevor's going to be a week 1 starter. That's what it don't matter. Trevor, What's that guy? Zach Wilson and
Fields.
Justin Fields. They are day one starters.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, Jamal, you don't remember. There was a time when even if you were taken number 1 overall as a quarterback, you sat. You know,
I remember Aaron Rodgers went through it. Jason Campbell went through it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, look, it ain't too far out. Shoot, what's his name? Oh no, that Cardell wasn't a first round pick. Never mind.
No,
Cardell Jones wasn't a pick at all.
No, he was picked. He was picked.
Was he?
Yeah, he was a third or fourth rounder or something like that.
Yeah, that's where I was getting at. He was picked, but I thought for some reason somebody picked him in the first, but that wasn't true.
No.
Buffalo drafted him, but I don't think he was true.
Maybe you're mixing him and Pryor up or something, because wasn't Terrell Pryor a first round pick?
I believe he was.
Yeah.
But either way, I think Terrell may have started day one too. But either way, I get your point. There was definitely a time where that was the case. Alex Smith and Trevor Lawrence, if they happen to be on the same team in Jacksonville, I do agree that that's just the player's coach of sorts, and to help guide them, and he'll obviously be somebody who can operate in a system if push come to shove.
Yeah.
Some emergency type of thing, but it's just hard for me to imagine who's going to sign him. Who's going to be in need.
Here's the thing, though. Right now, Washington has
Taylor Heineke
and Alex Smith. Now, if Washington could get a hold of Dak Prescott or pick your franchise quarterback, we've rehashed this on this show, Deshaun Watson, whoever, then maybe the calculus is pretty easy, pretty clear for Washington. But are they really going to get rid of a quarterback at a minimum, a professional starting quarterback when they have literally no one behind them, and they can't get Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, or Zach Wilson?
Yeah, they probably won't even get Trey Lance
I don't even want Trey Lance. Yeah. I don't think Trey Lance is even a day one starter. I don't think he's a first round pick.
I'm just saying they're not even going to be in. You might not think he's a first rounder. He's going in the first round.
What's the point?
That's
why cut him if none of that's going to happen? If Dallas is going to bring back Dak Prescott, which still seems like the most likely option, but you don't know, and it doesn't look like the Texans are going to trade Deshaun Watson. And then you've got, the people, we've talked about before. You got Jameis, okay, Marcus Mariota maybe, but I mean, it may just be that Washington just sticks with what they have for now.
They might be forced in that situation.
For those who are listening and saying, what about Kyle Allen? Just a reminder, he is not under contract.
No.
He is an exclusive rights free agent, so Washington has to re-sign him.
So who knows if he's even healthy?
Alex and Taylor Heineke right now.
Right.
Yeah. And who knows if Kyle's even going to be healthy. And even if he is, they need a backup and a third stringer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is we don't know yet. And I think part of the reason you're not seeing movement on some of these guys yet is you and I both know the cap situation, or we all know the cap situation is such a mess right now that most of these teams can't even fathom getting a quarterback on the roster because they don't have room. So, financial room, I mean. So I think until that gets finalized, whatever the cap's going to be, and teams start making a bunch of cuts, which is probably going to be next week or two, and you start seeing teams get under that cap number, that's when you'll see, maybe things heat up in the trade market again and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, all the reasons that you're saying, Alex, are why I don't think it's in any way certain that they're just going to cut Alex Smith.
Right.
When they don't have a replacement on the roster. They've got Taylor Heineke, period.
Mm-hmm. They could wait. I mean, they could always do a June 6th thing with Alex Smith and be waiting until then, And
again, if they get somebody, a starting quality player, whether through the draft or through, free agency or what have, that's a different story. But sure. I mean, I just don't, one, there's a PR problem with cutting Alex, but more than that, there's no replacement.
Right. And I think we all kind of are on the same page there. We should move on to the next topic. This one I think we'll be a little shorter on because I know, Steve, you probably talked about a lot of this on IJB, which will be releasing later this week.
I can babble again. It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So, of course, the Dan Snyder lawsuits, we always have to say suits because I think there's a dozen at this time,
Sort of.
Sort of. Well, they settled one that we talked about last week with the cheerleaders. We should mention that the team officially suspended the cheerleader squad for 2021 as they're doing rebranding. Rebranding is what they're saying, and they've said this was coming for a while.
Yeah.
We know that. But so there's no cheerleaders. We also know there's not going to be the band this year. So until they figure out the team name and whatever else they need to figure out. But the big stories, just a little tidbit story was that a lot of these people who are suing the team for sexual harassment cases and things like that, and who have been talking with the NFL investigators, are putting out a public request to demand that the NFL make the investigation public. From what I've heard, people talk about this and what the NFL's done in the past, generally speaking, the only time they've had an investigation like this and not made it public is when the owner sells the team before the investigation's over. So, that might tell you if it's going to be made public or not. It might not, but in the past, that's what's happened. I don't know, Steve, if you talked about that on your earlier show.
Now, look. Well, first of all, as a summary here, so all the things that are going on with Dan Snyder are this. Number one, there is an arbitration proceeding between him and the minority shareholders that the NFL is involved in that's done pursuant to NFL governing documents that has to do with Dan Snyder's use of a right of first refusal to sabotage the sale of the shares by the minority owners. That's number one. Number two, he has filed a lawsuit in India regarding the Indian website publishing materials alleging that he was linked to Jeffrey Epstein and sex trafficking.
Right.
That lawsuit has ballooned into a bunch of related lawsuits that all have to do with discovery and depositions across the country.
And we talked about that at the time, that India lawsuit was kind of a fact-finding thing.
But that's number two.
Yeah.
Number three, the Beth Wilkinson investigation. Number four, the sexual harassment lawsuits. That's what's going. All those are going on now. Beth Wilkinson is an NFL insider.
Right.
She's done this before. She represented Dan Snyder. If the NFL was going to get rid of Dan Snyder, it would have already happened by now. Beth Wilkinson is not going to uncover anything, and her mission is not to uncover anything that's going to sabotage a team or make the NFL look bad. Beth Wilkinson's job, in my view, is to make sure this goes away in as painless a way as possible. I think her role is not to be an impartial, or burn down the house. Her role is to cover everything up. So in that respect, I think nothing is going to happen except there will be some conclusions that there was, culture has gone bad here and there, bad things happen, but the new team is on the way. The team's going to get fined or have some other disciplinary thing, and then everybody will move on. I think that is what's going to happen. And by the way, this Jeff Bezos thing,
that's
a total non-burger, okay? It should surprise no one that some lawyer called Jeff Bezos' lawyer and talked about an NFL team. That happens all the time. It's totally nothing.
Right.
The Bruce Allen stuff is a whole nother story, and we should get into. But I'll let you guys.
I wanted to cover the smaller things first before we got into the Bruce Allen thing.
Right. That's why I shut up. So that's my initial view of things.
The big Bruce Allen story in some of this, what do we call it? Fact finding, Steve. That Snyder's
call it discovery.
Discovery. Yeah. Okay. In this discovery that Dan's done in, I believe it's the India lawsuit, it came out that the lawyer for the minority owners, who is it Moag? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Okay, so Moag is the investment advisor.
They're the investment
for
advisor.
The minority shareholders who has been trying to sell the 40% that they hold.
Right. So it turns out that Moag has had a whole bunch of calls with a whole bunch of people, and one of the big names that they discovered that Moag was talking to the whole time was Bruce Allen. And when we're talking, talking to him. I think they said it added up to about 20 hours or 22 hours worth of conversation.
Yeah, it was 87 phone calls for a
Right.
total of 22 hours. Now, I, who except your family
And coworkers,
I would
maybe.
like anyone to name someone you spent 22 hours talking to.
Right. And on the phone. You
on
know.
the phone.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very, and we're talking a fairly it's less than a year. We're talking a few months.
Not only that, it started right after after Bruce Allen got fired.
Right. Right. So the investment firm's talking to Bruce Allen. This is fascinating, and it's a very Bruce Allen-y move. We were talking about that before the show, Steve. Bruce Allen's entire time here was basically he would look for a fall guy for when things went bad, so he could cover his butt.
He's a slimy, vindictive snake.
Right. Right. And so I'm not shocked that after Snyder fired him, he would maybe be talking to somebody to try and make Snyder look bad.
Not just talking, but endlessly talking for 22 hours.
Well, as somebody who one of our friends who kind of is a friend of Bruce Allen or knows him through that, it depends on how much he's had to drink. It sounds like Bruce starts talking. Bruce can talk a lot.
And they're not, they ain't talking about, movies.
Nope. No.
And they're not talking about fine dining and wine.
Right. Right. Yeah. So this is a whole thing. And obviously they won't tell us what they were talking about in these. I mean, there are some texts I think here and there, but
some of it'll come out in some motions and stuff that are filed, but we will never read it, any sort of a transcript or anything like that because it doesn't exist.
It's a shame.
And the people are going to get deposed. Bruce Allen's probably going to get deposed.
Yes.
But that won't be made public.
Yes.
Not in
so
total.
he'll have been deposed twice by Snyder in like 2 years.
Listen, this is such an just outrageously ridiculous situation.
Yes.
I think number one, it's a testament to the strength of character of Ron Rivera that he was able to have any sort of success with this team last year in light of what's going on in the front office. So I think it's only because of Ron Rivera's leadership that this did not bring down the entire franchise last year. That's number one. I am amazed. But number two, it strikes me as someone who's done this before that Dan Snyder probably has a point.
Yeah.
I know it's fun to hate on Dan and everything, but there's a lot of sleazy things that have gone on here. And I'm not necessarily willing to say that Dwight Schrute and Bruce Allen fed Jeffrey Epstein lies to an Indian website, but there's no doubt that there are slimy hijinks going on and that Dan Snyder, to a certain extent, is a victim. Now, he may be a perpetrator on his own in other respects.
Yeah.
But I think there's a kernel of truth in all of this that we may never, ever find out.
I mean, it's almost getting, I don't want to say Shakespearean because I think that gives it too much credit, but
these people aren't that bright.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit more Billions, House of Cards-esque.
It's a bad movie is what this is.
It really is, because it's a bunch of billionaires, none of whom are really good people. And
they're all slime balls.
And they're all a little slimy. And then you got a couple millionaires who are their lackeys, who are also slime balls.
Jessica McLuhan's involved in this. Her name's come up as someone who's talked.
Right.
It's just, and Lord knows Jessica has no love lost for this Washington franchise either.
Oh yeah.
I think at the end of the day, because you guys pretty much had a decent discussion just now. I think at the end of the day, what we've understood to this point, at least with the Bruce Allen being involved to a degree, like you said, 20-something hours indicates that you guys have a lot to talk about. Regardless, it's undeniable you have a lot to talk about. And it don't matter what we believe, like the outside, because we're, like Steve said, we're not going to get everything that comes to light about, what these conversations were about. But I will guarantee you, the news outlets who are working hard on these things, they'll find something and they'll be reporting it soon. But my point is, when Bruce Allen is involved with the people who are going after Snyder to try and, sell their stake and who that attorney is representing. They're like, it paints a picture to further solidify who you think Bruce is. Like, there's no other reason for him like to be talking 20 something hours out of nowhere, and it just so happens, it's the year in which Bruce Allen is no longer with the team. You can only imagine what you're talking about. You're trying to help somebody to whatever degree it is. You're trying to help him, whether it's I'm not even going there, but you're trying to help somebody to whatever degree it is, further complicate Dan Snyder's current situation. That's as simple and non-combative as I could put it. He's trying to help further complicate Dan Snyder's current situation. To what degree, we don't know, but it just shows you, because he's done this plenty of times before, not in a legal setting, but in terms of like how he's operated in football operations. What makes you believe that he's not going to do the same for the person that fired him? And blamed him.
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, Bruce basically spent the beginning of every season trying to figure out who his fall guy was going to be if things went bad. If it was Scott McCloughan, if it was Brian LaFemina, if it was Jay Gruden, I think we all knew was being set up to be the guy that final year. Like, it always seemed like there was a guy getting set up to take.
How many people has Bruce Allen trashed?
Oh yeah,
publicly.
And he always did it the same way, through the national media, never the local.
Right.
Like we know what the MO was. We all know what was happening. It was comical that Dan Snyder seemed to let him last as long as it did in the first place.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother discussion another day, I guess. But it should surprise nobody that Bruce Allen is involved in this at all. I do think, like I said, that Dan Snyder, to some extent, is a victim here. That's my reading of the tea leaves, at least. What's going to happen, God only knows. I mean, it's almost there's so many things going on right now. One can only it's even hard to predict how this is going to come out. I think so. If you want to take a stab at it, though, the result of this arbitration here is that one way or the other, the minority owners are going to sell. They're going to be able to sell their shares because, listen, a right of first refusal does not prevent a sale. Okay, what a right of first refusal is this: if you want to sell, if I'm a minority shareholder and Alex is the principal and Alex has a right of first refusal, if I get an offer to sell my shares, I have to come to Alex and say, do you want to buy this?
Right.
And Alex will say yes or no. If he says no, then I can sell it to whoever I want. If he says yes, then he pays the price that the other guy offered me. That's what a right of first refusal is. What Dan has done here is sort of used it as to throw a monkey wrench into the sale because they were packaging it all together. So the end result of this arbitration, one way or the other, it's getting sold. And they have buyers. They have some Jose Feliciano, not the singer, but some billionaire in California and some other guy on the hook ready to sell it. Ready to buy. So one way or the other, this stuff's getting sold. So I can predict that. In terms of this lawsuit, the Indian lawsuit, I can't even begin to imagine what's going to come out of that yet. And in terms of the sexual harassment stuff, I already said my opinion on the Beth Wilkinson thing. I won't repeat that.
Right.
I hate the fact that they canceled the cheerleaders. There was a video that NBC News did where they interviewed a bunch of the cheerleaders, and it appeared from their story that the way Washington did it was very tacky. It was a 4-minute Zoom call with no video, and they didn't have any opportunity to ask questions. Just some faceless team exec saying, yeah, you guys are out. Sorry, bye. Best of luck. That's pretty tacky, I think. I don't understand why you can't have cheerleaders on the sidelines, but
I mean, I think they'll revisit. Understandably so. I ain't really. I get it. I just didn't. I ain't really find no problem with that. If they're gonna revisit it, it's the same thing with the band. So.
Yeah, I mean, the world's gonna keep turning. I get it, but I don't really get why they have to do that. That's
and another thing, also, just since we're on that subject, I do appreciate the need or appreciate transparency in general, and I think the request of them. I know we talked about this a while ago, so I just wanted to make a statement. We don't have to really talk about it, but I do appreciate the transparency in general, and I think that is a reasonable request of the for the investigation, for the results of the investigation, only because like after everything that you went through in 2020, there should be nothing under wraps when you're trying to uncover the truth of everything that has happened. Everything that can be legally reported to the public. I don't know the legality of everything, but everything that can be legally reported to the public should not be suppressed. It should be published. So I think that's a very reasonable request.
I think it's reasonable, and like I said before, in the past with these investigations, it seems like the NFL does make something public. If it's not the full report, it's a summary or something. And like I said, the only time they haven't done that was like the Jerry Richardson thing in Carolina.
And remember, Jerry got fired Jerry lost the team pretty quickly,
right?
Too. You don't let something drag on for 2 years and at the end of it get rid of the owner. You get rid of the owner out in the beginning.
Right. Well, and I think it's also fair to say all these are tied in together. All these lawsuits is what that's what makes it crazy. And you mentioned the Jeff Bezos thing in the beginning. There are some ties to maybe point to him having been behind some of this because he does want an NFL team, and that's well known that he's been wanting to be an NFL owner for a while.
By the way, I don't think Jeff Bezos would be any better than Dan Snyder. He's got a terrible reputation.
Yeah,
he's got a terrible reputation for people in Amazon. And he's got so many other interests on top of that I don't know if he would really be all that focused on winning football games.
Yeah.
But he's not known as a guy who treats people very well inside Amazon, from what I've always heard.
Yeah. I mean, it would kind of be like the Ford family owning the Lions. We're just a thing,
Right, that's right.
So anyway, we should move on a little bit. Let's talk about the topic du jour on our site this week, which was offensive line, specifically offensive tackles. Steve, I know you wrote an article. I think our writer, no one from Tampa, he did what did he do? He did the draft preview.
Right.
And then we also did a free agent preview on offensive tackles this week too, didn't we? A lot of tackle talk on our website. So if you like to talk about tackles, this
is your place.
This was your week. Fair to say, we don't have a big name left tackle right now on the team, but Lucas played well. I mean, I read your article, Steve. I want to kind of let you take the lead on the current state of the team before we get into this.
So the current state of the team is that Brandon Scherff is obviously free agent. Chase Rouillet is signed.
We're talking tackles.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just big picture here because it's all relevant, and the free agency preview was on offensive line generally, not just tackles. Cornelius Lucas is last year's starting left tackle. They've obviously got Jerron Christian. They've got Sadiq Charles, Wes Schweitzer, and then Martin. That's kind of where they are. Now, where they need to go in terms of the offensive line, generally the number one thing is Brandon Scherff. What happens to Brandon Scherff if they don't bring Brandon Scherff back? As our article said, they have a number of different guard options they could go through. But listen, I know he's expensive, but if you're not going to re-sign your first team All-Pro in a generation, who on earth are you going to re-sign, and what signal does that send to your players?
Yeah, of course.
About, if you're not going to bring a guy like that back, what does that tell people about what they're going to do with everybody else? So I think that the team is going to make a strong push to re-sign Brandon Scherff to a long-term deal. It's going to be more than $15 million a year because that's what his franchise tag is last year. He's not going to take a pay cut. So it's going to take more than $15 million a year to sign him. So that's that. In terms of left tackle, I mean, what my piece said, I looked at every starting left tackle in the NFL, where they came from, what their qualifications are. I looked at their draft status, whether they had been an All-Pro, and a Pro Bowler. And 20 of 32 were first-round picks.
Right.
There were only 5 teams that were starting left tackles last year that were not third round pick or up, including Washington. Washington was one of them. Cornelius Lucas, undrafted free agent. So it stands to reason that the team would want a more qualified person than Cornelius Lucas in there on a long term basis. That may be Sadiq Charles. Everybody thought that Charles got undervalued in the draft because of his character concerns. So maybe it's Charles. Charles will probably get a shot, but that won't stop the team from drafting somebody if they fall into the right situation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, I don't think that they're going to just rest on Cornelius Lucas, though, for sure.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of fans, and I don't know about you, Jamal, but on social media, it seems like there is a segment of the fan base that's sold on Lucas somehow being the starter for a couple years, which I find a little surprising personally.
I don't know. He held his own last year. I guess that's what kind of sold everybody, obviously. And then I think I want to say it was PFF. He had some good numbers to back his play in terms of like where he ranked. No, I'm not sitting here making an argument for him. I'm saying this is part of the reasoning why people are okay with him. But these are things where it will make sense for them to rationalize. If you okay a tackle, you can move over, you can focus on the interior, which is obviously shoring up Brandon Sheriff, and then focusing on who's gonna be playing at left guard, which was pretty unstable, to say the least. So to answer your question directly, I don't know about Cornelius Lucas. I can't say that he's a bad option, but I don't think you have to do a heavy investment at left tackle if you're looking for a replacement, unless it's a bona fide starter that you're interested in and you want to spend money on, or like first round pick or second round pick type. But I don't think they'll be willing to do that. I think Cornelius may have at least earned himself the projected starting spot until he, has to go out and compete.
I think a lot of it has to do with what they think about Sadiq Charles.
Yeah, I do think he's kind of gotten, I don't want to say overlooked, but people have forgotten about him a little because he got hurt. Only played in, I think, 1-2 games, something like that, before going on IR.
Yeah, not much.
Yeah. So, and, there's also an argument that he might just be more of a right tackle because, I mean, he is a third or fourth rounder. Guys like that generally don't play left tackle.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it matters what they think of him, and we don't really know what they think of him. But they drafted him, and was he third round? I think he was the third round pick. Wasn't he third round pick?
I think so. Didn't they traded back up into the draft to get him or something like that?
I'll figure it out here in a minute. I'll go look. But
Zeke was a fourth.
Fourth? Okay. Yeah.
It was a round where they had 2 draft picks.
But a lot of like film guys who is not me when it comes to offensive line thought very highly of Sadiq Charles' talent. Robbie Duncan thought very highly of him, and others. So it's possible that they want to give him a shot. I guess that's my point. Yes, the norm is to have a big time first round pick. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to automatically do that, given who they have. I don't. They're certainly not going to trade up for a tackle. But if like the big names, since we're doing this, there's several big names in the offensive tackle, world for the draft this year, and I'm pulling it up here. And here it is. Okay. And this was our writer, no one from Tampa. But the three biggest names are, forgive me, I've mispronounced his name, but Penei Sewell from Oregon, Christian Darrisaw from Virginia Tech, and Samuel Cosme from Texas. Those are the 3 biggest names. I think if they could grab one of those 3 guys at 19 in the draft, they might just do it. Because why would you pass up that kind of talent at a position of need? So, but beyond that, I don't know if they're going to make a huge move to bring in one of these other lesser names. The names that no one listed. Slater, Alex Leatherwood from Alabama.
Right.
There's a few others in there. But if they could grab one of those top 3 guys, I think they might just do it.
Now, I will say, when I was looking at the lists of just all the guys who are going to be in the draft, The one guy that obviously stands out, if you're just into numbers, this kid from Minnesota, Faleli, or I don't know how you pronounce his last name there.
Yeah.
He's a 6'8"
He sounds like
Samoan
a Greek
kid.
sandwich.
Yes. He's a 400-pound, 6'8" Samoan kid who just looks almost like Andre the Giant, just how big he is compared to everybody else.
Part of me wants to call him Daniel Falafel, but that's not how you pronounce it.
I could go for a falafel right now. That's pretty good. But yeah, I don't know. And I'm like you, Steve. I'm not an expert when it comes to line. So I see a guy that size. I'm just like, I want that. I don't know how good he is, but I want that. I want big.
He's big.
Yes,
He's
and
big.
he is big. I'm with you. Unless one of these top 3 guys who are probably a first rounder falls to us, I don't see an urgency to draft somebody to be a day one starter. You need guys you can groom, because I think we're on the last year of Moses' deal. You're probably going to want to replace him because he's going to get up there in age and cost, and he's a right tackle.
Moses is signed through 2022.
Oh, 22. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, but still, we're getting towards the tail end of that career.
But he's going to be 30 in March.
Yeah.
He's on the downside.
Right. So, if you're playing, cap economics, you probably need to start looking for a right tackle. So, but you, again, don't need to do that in round 1. You can do that in rounds 4, 5, 6, and find good
And you
right
don't
tackles.
even need to do it this year either.
Yeah. But always good to keep adding linemen. We also know that.
Yes.
Above all else, the most important thing is to bring back Brandon Scherf for many
of
reasons.
course. I think we all agree there.
And the team ought to be prepared to pay a lot of money for him.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people balking at the whole, oh, well, you don't pay that much to a guard. I know the cap's going to be low this year, but once that new TV deal's done, that cap is going to start skyrocketing in the future. So
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
It's going to be very significantly more in the coming years.
yeah, don't be surprised if the cap gets to like $300 million real quick.
I mean, by average annual value, Scherf was the top paid guard in the NFL last year by virtue of his franchise tag. So you got to figure that $15 million a year is probably the floor for him for a contract.
Yeah.
And I think they ought to do it. They can afford it. Again, the team's only all pro in 25 years, and if you don't count the punter, it's more than that.
If you don't count the punter, it's only like 28 years because we actually have good football teams for a while.
Yeah, for a while, a long time ago. But point is, I reiterate what I said earlier. If you're not going to sign a 4-time Pro Bowler in first team All Pro who's had good character, not complained about anything, his only downside, he's been hurt a little bit in recent years. I don't know who else you're going to re-sign. And what does that tell your other players? You're going to be that good and they're just going to let you walk.
Yeah.
That doesn't send a good signal to the team either, I don't think.
No, it doesn't. I guess I'll ask this question before we wrap up this topic, and I'll start with you, Jamal. Do you think that they could make any moves in free agency, or that they will make any big moves in free agency on the line, or is this a draft-only situation?
No, I don't think they will. I don't think they will in free agency. And I think, I'm specifically talking about like big moves, I think they, if anything, they're going the same route that they did last year when they got the guy from Atlanta.
Is that David Sharp?
No. Schweitzer.
Yeah, I'm about to say Schweitzer.
Okay.
Like they're looking for guys who can fill in depth, but also compete for that starting job.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll circle back to offensive linemen like when the time is there. Or when when the time is now, excuse me. But I don't think that now time is here yet. So maybe do a couple of signings in free agency and then draft mid to late if they need. But I don't think it's going to be anything significant. I think they're focusing on other things, which is obviously going to be building up skill side, the skill positions on offense, and obviously trying to find a quarterback.
Let's be honest. Schweitzer's been pretty solid as far as a pickup goes for what he costs and all that. I think it's safe to say he's going to be our starting left guard next year.
By default, at least.
Yeah.
right now. If you want some names, the big names on the tackle market Russell Okung,
Right.
Trent Williams, and Alejandro Villanueva from Pittsburgh. Those are the three names. Trent Williams, we've been over. We don't need to talk about that. Russell Okung was drafted in the same year as Trent. Mike Shanahan picked Trent over Russell, but he's out there. Andre Villanueva is the Steelers' undrafted free agent who's a quality player, but all three of these guys are all 32 years old, so they're not people you'd want to give. They're not the future. They'd be fill-in for a couple years. I'm with Jamal. I don't think Washington's going to spend anything more than, some depth, minimum salary money maybe at offensive linemen. I just don't think they're going to do that. I think it's Brandon Scherf or bust, and then a draft pick or Cornelius Lucas / Sadiq Charles. That's what I think the line is next year.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think once they settled into the kind of line formation they had with Lucas, they weren't great. A lot of people seem to think that was some kind of elite offensive line that we had.
They have bad numbers. The running game was terrible. They gave up a ton of sacks. It's not a talented offensive line. They do need to improve it. I'm just saying, and I think this is what Jamal is saying, it's just not really a good year for them to go out and spend big money. And you don't traditionally spend lots of free agent money on a tackle. That's what the point of my article was, that, most of the time you find a tackle in the draft.
Yeah.
And so I do
that's
think
absolutely true.
If one of those three guys I mentioned earlier, Darisaw, Sewell, or who's the other guy?
It's not Leatherwood. Who was it? Sewell?
Well, he's another one. But yeah, I mean, if one of those guys falls to him, I think they might jump on it because they do have to improve the talent.
Right.
It's not acceptable what they have. Part of the running game problem is their fault. All the sacks, a lot of that is their fault. So, I mean, it's not a solid situation at all.
Although, if you do go back and look, and I did this after I read your article, we did have one game with 8 sacks versus the Rams. That one game spiked the numbers quite a bit. Because Alex Smith took 6 sacks in that one shot.
Yeah. Excuse the number, but point is, they do need help.
They do.
But just big money on the free agent market, I don't see it at all.
I look at the guys who are there, and none of them are guys I want to pay big money for. I don't want to give Russell Okung $20 million.
No. I don't think anybody wants. I don't think Trent would come back here, and I don't think the team wants to give Trent money.
No.
Alejandro Villanueva, solid character guy, but he's 32 years old. You know.
Right. Does he really? I mean, I might kick the tires and see what he wants, but maybe. I would do that with any of them.
But again, those guys are stopgaps.
Right. It's not an answer.
No.
And the draft, there's a couple good names. I think that you definitely could find depth in this draft if you don't find somebody.
I think it's almost assured they're going to draft an offensive lineman at some point. Yeah. They always do.
Yes, because you always should. They're like 20% of your roster is offensive line. You should always be drafting a guy.
Right.
So, anyway, I think that unless you guys have anything else to add about line, I think we can kind of wrap that up.
Can we just bash Bruce Allen for another few minutes?
All right. What do you want to bash him?
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, we've already said what we're going to say about him. I'm just joking.
Yeah. I always loved how he...
I just mean it's always a good default.
I always loved how even if he had a nice suit on, an expensive suit on, he looked like he just woke up from a nap that he wasn't planning on taking.
He also looked like the slimiest used car salesman I've ever met in my entire life. He's the guy who's going to sell you a Kia Sportage for $30,000 and be happy about it.
Yeah, and he'll tell you that it was only slightly used and never mention the fact that it was like left in a 10-foot flood.
And then he'll bash you on the way out.
Right.
And call you Kirk when your name is Kirk.
I never understood that. Oh, it's his
him
accent.
Being stupidly vindictive. It's not an accent. It's him being vindictive. What he would say is that he was trying to say Kirk, and it just sounded badly on television.
No,
That's
it's my Virginia accent. You grew up in Northern Virginia. You don't have an accent. No one here has an accent.
Was him being stupidly vindictive.
Yeah, of course. All right, guys. I think we are right at an hour, so we can wrap this show up, technically. I hope that everybody who's listening enjoyed the show. What?
I'm saying, hold up, we gotta do the quarterback thing, man.
Oh, that's right.
Right. We got to do the quarterback
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Has it changed at all from last week, a week ago? Last week I had Jameis Winston. You guys, I do not remember what you
I
did.
said Alex Smith. I don't remember
You
what
did
Alex
say
said.
Alex Smith. Alex,
Steve
what did
said
you say?
Alex Smith. I said Taylor Heineke because I still think Alex Smith is getting cut in the next few weeks. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Has the opinion changed this week in terms of who will be starting for the Washington football team week 1?
For me, no. I think this GQ story thing will blow over, and right now there's not a better option on the roster. So I think Alex Smith will start right now.
Okay. What about you, Beth?
I don't really think my opinion's changed either. I am starting to realize that it's probably more likely going to be some free agent. I just can't figure out who, so that's why I'm going to stick with Heineke with the caveat that probably he's the number 2 and it's Fitzpatrick or somebody else like that.
Okay. All right. Again, mine stays the same. Obviously, we're 2 weeks into this whole thing, this silly game. So
things have been quiet too.
For those who are unfamiliar, we're basically rehashing this. We're basically after the end of each show, making a prediction of a constantly updated prediction of who will be the starting quarterback week 1 for Washington until we get the final definitive answer.
Right.
So yeah, all of us are still the same: Alex Smith, Taylor Heineke, and Jameis Winston.
All right.
Crab salesman, beware.
Okay, guys. Hope you all have a great week out there. Make sure to listen to IJB, where Steve will be breaking down the whole Dan Snyder saga in much further detail with Chris. And we will see you next week.